Okay, so here's problem number 31. Okay, let's remind ourselves, what do we mean by linearization?
Are you recording this?
Yeah.
Oh.
Linearization is just a fancy way of saying
Getting to this
First
derivative.
the P1 Taylor polynomial, the first order Taylor polynomial, or the thing that looks like C0 plus C1 times X. Oh, that is a linear expression, a constant times a plus a multiplier times a thing. Now officially it's actually x minus a, but we are centering tangent
At 0.
at 0. All right? So how do we find the first order Taylor polynomial? Well, let's write out our things. N,
F to the nth of x.
C, and A, and then C sub n, which is f to the n at A divided by n factorial.
I have to have it in a plus bi, right?
0. What is the zeroth derivative of this function?
Tangent x.
Thank you. What is the zeroth derivative at A, or in this case at 0? Tan at 0 is 0, so this C sub 0 is equal to 0. Great. Let's go to the first derivative.
Secant squared x.
Oh boy.
The first derivative at 0
Gonna die.
1.
is 1 squared. The value of secant at 0 is 1, so secant squared is 1 squared. So C1 is equal to 1 divided by
1 factorial.
1 factorial, which is 1. So in other words, from these two calculations, we can now find what is the...
1.
No, it's x.
It is,
Yeah,
it is 0 plus 1 times x.
Okay.
That's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do to find the linearization. By the way, another way of saying linearization is what is the tangent line of that function at the centering point.
Bam.
Now, let's go ahead, let's do one more derivative because it also asks us for the quadratic approximation,
That's
which is a
second.
fancy way of saying P2.
The cubic approximation, P3.
Right. So what is the derivative of secant squared? 2 times secant times secant tangent.
Oh, that's
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, bring the power down, keep the inside the same, multiply by the derivative of
Oh. I did that totally wrong.
it. Okay, so this is 2 secant squared tangent.
About that, Shayna.
Next question is, what's the value of this function at the center?
Well, it's 2
0.
times 1 times 0.
0.
Tangent is 0,
Yeah.
so the whole thing's 0.
It's 2 times 1 times 0.
I got that part right.
So C2
Is
0.
0.
is equal to 0. So
The whole thing
P2.
the whole thing is just x.
Bam.
Yeah.
It has the same linear and quadratic approximation. All right?
Yeah, how would you graph that?
How would I graph that? Well,
Just graph that.
you know, if we want to reinforce this idea graphically,
Wouldn't it be a tangent?
to say,
x?
well, they like you to do that from the standpoint of understanding. They don't necessarily mean that you have to do that as part of the exam. What we're going to say is, and we'll do a zoom trig, I think. If we look at the graph of tangent, there's the graph of tangent, isn't it nice?
Yes.
And then we say around the center of 0, does the line y equal x mimic that function for small areas around the center? And the answer is yeah. And that's all I did. Polynomials are estimators or duplicators of, in at least small terms, in small spaces around the center, of the functions that that we use the Taylor polynomials for. Are we okay? Did we actually answer all the parts of the question? We found the linearization, we found the quadratic. C, graph the function and the linear and the quadratic around there and see how the graphs are related. Yep, we did it all. Excellent.
Yay.
All right.
Oh boy.